All right, so we're starting with single point vanishing with linear perspective. I don't want to put my dot dead center in the page because I don't want it to be most compositions. If your focal point, you don't want dead center. And this isn't necessarily going to be the focal point, but I want things to come off from the side. So I'm going to put a little dot way out there. I want it big enough I can see it, but I don't want it so big that when I aim to it, I have a variety of choices. If you make a great big fat circle, it's a little harder. So what I'm going to do, just want you to watch, and then the rest of the class period, I'll let you draw this and work on whatever we did today and answer any questions. But it's just easier if I just go for this real quick. You're going to create shapes, solid closed shapes that are anywhere on this page except on top of that dot. Okay? So you can use your compass if you like. I'm going to put a circle over here. I might want a bigger one over here. I might want a random shape where I just make up one. So I'm just holding the edge of my compass, creating some random closed shape. And I'll come over here, might want a triangle. We'll just make it something else.
Carrie, the dot is I heard you say.
The dot is my vanishing point.
Okay.
And this is going to be called flying shapes. And I just want random shapes. I mean, if you want to, you can do curved shapes. If you have an S in your name and you know how to do a bubble letter, you can even do a bubble letter. Kids love to do these things like this. I want something out here, something different, curvy. I like to have a variety of things. Curved, solid. That's enough to start with. I have 7 shapes. That's an odd number. Odd numbers are good. So now what I want to do is I want to direct lines to that vanishing point from these shapes to look like they're flying out from that vanishing point. So I'm going to take my ruler, this joy of a clear ruler again. I'm going to always aim to that point. Move some other stuff. I'm going to remember when we did the scroll and we went to the very, very top edge. So I'm going to start with this circle. I'm going to go to the very outside edge. See how I have it on my dot, and I'm going to the very outside edge. If I go any further, I'm off the circle. So I want to go to the very edge of that circle, and I'm going to draw a line to that dot. Then I'm going to slide it this way. This is like a pivot point. Like if you play basketball, one foot never moves, or you double dribble. Okay, so I'm going to slide over here, and I'm going to go to the other side of this circle, and I'm going to aim to that dot. I don't have any other edges to connect to that, so that piece is finished. So I'm going to go, I want to go to the pieces that are closest to my vanishing point first. So this one's pretty close, so I'm just going to spin it around. Now this one's more difficult because it has all these curves. But remember that scroll that we did? Where you went to the top of a curve, the bottom of the curve, and you went toward the paper of the scroll? That's the same thing here, except you're going toward the vanishing point. So I'm going to put my point on the vanishing point. I'm going to slide it till I hit the bottom edge of this S. And I'm going to aim it to that vanishing point. Then I'm going to scroll up, and I go, oh, I hit the bottom of something here, but I don't draw it because it goes through the shape. You see that? If I drew it, I would be going through the shape, so I don't draw it. So I continue up. Oh, here's one. Here's the top edge of something, and I draw it. Ta-da! Then I go over here, and I hit the bottom edge of this out here. Remember when we drew the scroll, when we were doing the paper that spiraled in and in, you drew only to where you hit something? So here, I'm going to aim there, I'm going to draw in, I hit that part, so I stopped. So now I'm going to come all the way out here, get to the very outside edge, and I draw in. So the thing about this, just like the scroll, is it's going to give the illusion of something flying out. Right now it's flat, but when you come back in with the shading that you're learning, so that I want this dark because it's on the inside. I want it to get lighter here and then get a little darker there to give the illusion of a bend. This can be darker. But every time you come to a line, you want a different value. Kind of like we just did on that circle. I'm not worried about the lines here showing, that's fine. But I want the lines on here to kind of disappear. So I'm going to create just a little shadow there to create a bend, and a little shadow here to create a bend, because this one is bending. Oops, bad eraser.
Every time you come to a line, what did you say?
Well, when two lines like here and here,
Right.
ideally these would be different colors.
Okay.
Or different values, and I could make this just ever so like that could be a number 2 in value, where the S is a number 1.
Okay.
But a project like this is actually really fun to do in color. But by creating that bend, that gives it dimension. This one be very similar. Well, I should stay in the lines. A little darker on the outside, gets a little lighter here. And then on this you would decide, well, is this going to be a solid on the inside? Is the end solid, or is it open? I'm going to blend that a little bit. So I went over the line. So you can decide if this is going to be a solid flat piece. If it's a solid flat piece, you can just leave it like that. Or you could even shade these as though they were flat. Just create a little bit of a value difference, so it creates a little more interest. So if I wanted this open, though, the inside of this would be really dark. It gets lighter as it comes out. Kind of like we just did on that circle. See how things relate one thing to another? But let me just finish drawing it, then I won't worry about the shading. Obviously, when I get further away, I'm going to need a longer ruler. So I'm going to get to this one. And this is, well, this one is okay. But what I don't like about this, it happens to line right up exactly with that. It just runs right into it.
We can't see it.
Oh.
There you go. Okay.
See, it just ran right into it. So if I'd have checked that ahead of time, I might have cut this down a little bit so there'd be a little space in between. So think about that when you do yours. I'm not going to draw this one because I put my finger on it, my pencil on it, and aim to the point, and it would go through the shape, so you don't draw it if it goes through the shape. You go to the next corner, aim, it would go through the shape, so don't draw it. Here, aim, it hits something, you stop.
Oh, just stop.
You stop if you run into something. So now I ran into that, so let's go ahead and do the points on that one. I go to this point, aim, here. I go to this point, aim, here. I ran into something, I stop. This point, aim, I go through the shape, I don't draw it. Go to this point, aim. This point, we go through the shape, I don't draw it. This one, so that one would be that one. So this is similar to the S, except it's got straight lines. I said I wasn't going to shade, but that, that's straight, that would be straight, and this would be, but you see it by the way you shade it, if it's straight, you would want it to look flat. You wouldn't create curves in it. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so you see how it works? You aim, draw till you hit, aim, draw till you hit, aim, draw till you hit. Here, another circle, you come to the very outside edge of it. Very outside edge of it. Oh, see, here's another, that's what I wouldn't, so if I'm going to change that shape just a little bit just for the heck of the demonstration. And don't do that one. And that's probably the only one you would draw because that lines up. So this is called flying shape. What it does is it helps you aim to a vanishing point. It helps you create the illusion of depth when you add shading to it. And when we do like buildings where you have two vanishing points, then some of this will make a little bit more sense. And you can get as involved and intricate in these crazy shapes out here as you want. To me, some of the ones that are more interesting are the random ones that you create. I mean, I could do a W or a little weird thing like that. That wasn't even drawn with a ruler, which won't reflect the rest of this as well. But so lined it right up again. But there'll be a lot of drawings that this knowing how to look for the vanishing point and how not to draw it when you don't need to will help. One of the things that fascinate kids is, and some adults, this same kind of thing where you create this hole in the ground. Like here's a hole. Might not look like a hole, but pretend that's a hole. And so your vanishing point is down here. So you go to the edge, draw down. You're creating the illusion of a cliff. See what I'm talking about? Isn't that crazy? But it's the same kind of thing, and there's a lot of things you can do with this, fabric and, So this one would be the darkest dark because it's behind things. But anyway, that's very smooth cliff edges, but that'll give you the idea of what want another way to use it. And then it could be fabric, folds of fabric.
So is vanishing point,
The vanishing point down here would be down here.
is that perspective?
It's perspective. Okay, so we have 30 minutes. And in that 30 minutes, I want you to work on whatever it is that
Okay, here's the sign.
yeah.
The little thing we passed around and we took pictures of it, I drew this.
Mm-hmm.
Darker is closer, warmer, in focus, and intense. But that's in the distance and it's darker.
Right, but this is really not dealing with atmospheric, that one's atmospheric.
This is atmospheric perspective.
Yeah, right, atmospheric perspective on it. Good question. Yeah, this is just creating the illusion of
So
depth.
that's a landscape, atmospheric perspective.
Right, is dealing with landscape. When you're dealing with still lifes and portraits and things that are up close, that's not something you have to fool with. But it was just a point of how I use value and
Right, I just want to make sure I understand. I'm trying to, when you say you'll have this whole thing drawn and you'll go, and of course this one's darker, and I'm like, And
No,
I know that.
that's a good question, though. That's a very good question. So, this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I always know what's supposed to be dark and light, or understand that centerpiece because it's a fold underneath. But I don't just get that.
Well, that'll come.
Oh,
Now, it will. Now, part of it is because I've drawn a lot of things like this,
Right.
where the top is going to be lighter, and one side's darker, and one side's not as dark, and the part where the light hits is the lightest part. So in translating that, this, which would be the ground, if I'm pretending this is a hole in the ground, hole in the ground wouldn't be this smooth. I'll do another one in a minute that's real jagged. But I know that the light is not hitting this directly, so this is going to be the lightest light. Things that are closest to the opening are going to be lighter. Things that are tucked away further back are going to be a little darker. And like when we did that sphere, how the very edge of the sphere was not the lightest light, but the somewhere else close to it is. But y'all are asking good questions, so I mean there's so much to drawing that that applies. I mean, that's kind of why I started with the sphere and the lines. You got used to aiming at something, and then you aim something here. It all builds on itself. And so if something doesn't make sense now, keep asking questions, and it might be I need to show you a different way.
How do you decide which lines to draw down?
Okay, good question. What I did on that is just like when I went here and I was looking for an edge, like that when I hit something, edge, when I came across here, here was a different edge. I didn't draw that one because it went through. And then there was an edge. It was the edge, the beginning or end of like the top or bottom of the scroll. Like that's the bottom of the S. That's the bottom of the curve of the S. That's the top of the curve of the S. See what I'm talking?
Yeah.
Okay. So in this, I'm all aiming down. Like if this was the scroll, remember how we went to the bottom of the line and we went toward the scroll, the bottom of the line? So when I turn it sideways, do you see you've already done this with the scroll? You went to the top of the curve and went down. Now here, with that scroll, see if it was a scroll, if it was paper, if this was wadded up paper, I would draw lines at every curve.
It is.
Okay, so now
Now we got paper instead
I've
of
got a
dark
paper instead of a hole.
Lordy mercy.
But it's an optical illusion, and there's things that it's like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. Isn't that weird how that works?
Yeah,
Keep it in.
it's weird how you just do it in a second.
Well, I've done it a lot.
I know you do.
I've done it a lot. But, you know, once this clicks and it's like, it's like, oh, I know how to do that. I can do that. And kids, if you want your grandchildren to be fascinated by something you know, draw them something like this and they'll be just like, oh, you're magic. Because, I mean, they really appreciate things like this. It's crazy. They do. But you know, if it was a real jagged hole out in the desert, you know, it might look more like this.
Then where do you choose to draw lines?
It could be just where I don't go as deep, where it might come into a riverbed.
Where are
So-
you imagining your vanishing point is?
Oh, I'm just pretending that this could be
The Grand Canyon.
the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Or here's the moon. Lovely moon. Here's craters. And in those you know, it's just where you create. I mean,
You're showing us how you create that.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to, now if you want it to go all the way down, you know, you can go all the way down. And they don't have to be straight lines. Like the Grand Canyon has layers and layers of lines, and there might be a river going through here. This might come down at a sharp angle. It might be a steep canyon. But just looking at things like that to say, oh, where's the top edge? And then this would be, does that make sense? Okay. Well, I'm going to,
Makes sense with you doing it. Yeah. Gail, will you send me all the pictures from today? I forgot my phone. Here.
but anyway. See,
I saw you taking them. I like to take one of hers.
and if there's anything you want up close that you want me to pass around, you're welcome to. I don't know if the TV, taking it from the TV, like here's Alexa's, that's her copy, or my copy of her pointillism.
Are all those points on that finished?
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah, your dots.
are? There's no line.
No line.
Wow.
She got 100.
Even her whiskers are points.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how cute.
If it's pointillism, everything's a dot.
Okay.
Now, you put dots close enough together, they're going to form a line.
Right.
Here's Jessica's